Hi there. Hello, it's Pearl here. And I thought I'd just do a little live today because I'm not feeling so good. And you can take my hair, it's brushed, but it's a bit messy. I'm a bit messy wearing my glasses. And the reason is because I'm not feeling that great today. And I've been thinking about doing this live for a little bit. What I often find is that things come up. So, for example, I did a podcast the other day and we kind of touched on some of this. I had a conversation, a discovery call with somebody the other day. We really got into some of this. And with friends and family, these kind of subjects are coming up about health. And I thought, you know what, there's all these little bits that I haven't sort of brought together. So let me do that here. And in my books about fear of success, I've told some stories that are about health, about illness, that kind of thing. But I haven't brought it all together, So I thought, let me do this in a little live. And also, it's something that although I've done some work on, I haven't done all the work there is to do. I don't think you ever can. So if people have got questions, that's great for me to be able to have that conversation and to do this in a more relaxed way. So Q&A, and that is often where I find the truth comes out. But to start with, I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about things being psychosomatic. And they had the idea that if something is psychosomatic, it means that we've thought a lot about illness and then it's kind of brought it on. And that's not what psychosomatic means at all. Um, it's got a couple of different meanings, but we can really talk about it as being something like our thinking or stuff that's going from on for us, maybe subconsciously, can come out through the body. Um, but if we actually look at what's going on for us, we can say that so much of our health problems, illnesses are psychosomatic because we know that a lot of them relate to stress. Okay, even perhaps sometimes the way we're living our lives. The other thing that's really important, I always teach this when I teach meditation, is that the great Thich Nhat Hanh always said, one of the best things that we can do in order to reduce stress is just to remember to breathe. Breathe in, breathe out. And one of the first things that we do when we get stressed is we hold our breath. And as well as not, allowing us to get enough oxygen, it's also really bad for our muscles, our lungs. I have a tendency to not breathe into this lung sometimes because I've had some illnesses and some problems here. So one of the things I can consciously do is to practice breathing and doing really great breathing outside, and making sure that I'm not just holding my breath or doing very shallow breathing. So that's a way that I can kind of counter what we might call a psychosomatic way of hurting myself, which is just being so caught up that I forget to breathe really, really well. And, so that's a real basic thing we can do in meditation, in all kinds of practice as well. But the other thing about psychosomatic illnesses is we have to be careful when we're talking about them that we're not sort of blaming anybody uh, for having a psychosomatic illness, for being stressed, or for even, say, subconsciously creating an illness. It's really, really common, especially when we're doing any healing work, for us to have things that we might call healing crises. And what we can often feel is we can feel pain in our bodies. We can have problems with things like temperature, managing temperature. And a really good example of this is when we're going through grief. So when we're going through grief, what we often do is we can often have shooting pains in our joints and that kind of thing. We can feel very, very cold and not be able to get warm again. So when we talk about grief, we often think of it as being something psychological. But when we're dealing with profound grief, it's really a physical thing as well. There's a lot going on in our body. And perhaps the most important thing we can remember when we're trying to understand health and well-being is that we're always one thing. We're always mind, body, and spirit. It's what we call being holistic, looking at the whole being rather than necessarily separating things out as being mental health or physical health or even spiritual health. We could say grief is about spiritual health, but actually we know it's all connected. It's always all connected. So why do we need to break it down? Well, we don't always have to break it down, because sometimes when we're working, we can work without words. We can work in a holistic way. That's what I love about Zumba and most types of yoga. There's a holistic acceptance. We're mind, body, spirit all the time. We heal together. We individually heal all parts of ourselves together. Because obviously, if you've got a mental health problem, it's going to affect everything. Okay. And I think that's a really important thing to remember when we're trying to heal things. And it's funny though, because sometimes we have, say, a physical reaction to something, and I have a physical intolerance to certain chemicals. And for decades, since I was a teenager, when I went to university, I had some real problems, and I went to the doctor, the GP, and they put it down to stress. Stress because I lived away from home, and I was having all these reactions, and they were saying, yes, it's just stress. And often I had like a cough as well that was going on. And I remember going to speak to a traditional healer, and oh yes, this is a spiritual problem. So I have one doctor telling me it's a mental problem, a healer telling me it's a spiritual problem. But ultimately, I discovered when I ended up in A&E in hospital, it was a physical problem. And it was a physical intolerance to certain chemicals, which is actually, like all these things, once you figure it out, you go online, you look it up, and you find there's thousands of other people, millions of other people who have strong reactions to those same chemicals. And in fact, they're not very good for anybody. So maybe that reaction isn't a bad thing, because it has helped me to avoid those strong chemicals that can cause really long-term problems for anybody and everybody. But it's very easy for us to work with people who want to label it as one thing or another. You've got a stress-related problem. You've got, a spiritual problem. You've got a healing problem. You've got a subconscious problem. You've got this, that, the other. All you have to do is think yourself well. All you have to do is take this pharmaceutical drug. All you have to do is read this book. And in my experience, what I've learned is it is both simpler and more complicated than that. And as a shaman, as somebody who studied with a Native American shaman, what's a really easy solution, okay, because I'm saying all this and it sounds really confusing, right? But we know as shaman that the answers are within you. So when you have a health issue and a health problem, it's great to be able to look out there, to talk to other people, to get lots of advice. But really, it's you, when you go and you listen deeply to yourself, that can understand and know what's really going on for you. So that quiet, that listening is a really wonderful thing. And so today I'm okay actually, but I started off the day having some really sharp migraine type pain. So I'm taking it very easy today, being very careful, thinking about what I eat, what I drink, staying out of the sun for a little bit, and just taking it easy, doing that gentle admin work, things like that. Nothing too stressful, apart from this. No, this isn't stressful. But I've done a lot of research on my condition, on migraine. And what's really great is that there are other people who are doing a lot of research as well. And we know it's a condition that can really be aggravated by stress. And nobody denies that anymore. But for a long time, people were really talking about it as being almost at the only cause, that migraine was psychosomatic, that migraine was something that we thought ourselves into. And that was very difficult for a lot of people who suffer from migraine because it meant that we weren't getting the support. And the more research that's done now, the more people realize, yes, this is a real illness. And now we can take photos of the brain. We can actually see what's going on in the brain when people have migraine attacks. And we can also understand things like there's a genetic element. So if you don't have the genetic element, you're never going to suffer from them, which is kind of a relief for a lot of people. But it also makes sense why some people experience them and other people never will. You lucky, lucky people that you never will. But there are lots of things that we can do. And it's really important if we have a health issue that we get to know it. We get to know ourselves. We explore it, whether that is a breathing difficulty, an intolerance, a genetic disorder. It doesn't matter, because what we can do is we can go and we explore. We find out better ways of managing it. And we also find better ways of managing our general health. If we really look at the things that cause the most problem for the most people, they tend to be things that we can do a lot to manage in terms of lifestyle. And sometimes the biggest way we can use our mind, body, spirit together is to recognize that we need to take care of ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. You know, our mind is saying we need to go to work, we need to earn money, we need to do this. But we also need to recognize that we need to take care of our body and our spirit as well. And it's funny how many people take time to manage our pensions. I mean, we don't really have a choice a lot of the time, okay? But it's all about planning for retirement, planning for old age. But how much time and money do we actually invest in making sure that we make it to old age? That when we get there, we're not suffering from dementia, we're not suffering from heart disease, all those kind of things. Because we need to do the best that we can day to day and look after ourselves. And there's a lot of work in what I do in terms of fear of success, which is all about recognizing our gifts and recognizing our own perfection and taking care of ourselves, because we are the love of our own life, and looking after ourselves like we would, you know, a fancy car, which has been said by other teachers as well, or a house. You know, and it's funny how we often put more time and money into looking after our clothes, our house, our car, our portfolio, our pension fund, than we do into taking care of our very precious and beautiful and wonderful and only self, which is kind of amazing. Anyway, I've got some notes here. I like Jenna. Just going to check on those. And one thing I wanted to just mention as well, because I did talk to wonderful Molly Lowe, and there's a lot of clips coming up on my YouTube of that chat we had. We were really talking about finding our voices. And there was one little story that I didn't share with her, and I thought I just would. It's kind of a relaxed one. And it's I remember, and you can hear it as I'm trying to speak. I remember times when I really wanted to speak. I really wanted to say something. And I couldn't actually talk. Couldn't actually talk at all. And so my mind was saying, yes, I want to speak. And I was actually trying to tell somebody that I love them. So I was trying to say, I love you. And I remember it very clearly that I was there and I was trying to say it. And I could mouth it, but my voice, I literally could not give voice to that. So I could mouth it, but my body would not cooperate. So the fear that I had, and that is a fear of success, a fear of emotional intimacy, a fear of saying what I wanted to say. My body was so scared that I couldn't say anything. It's like those times when our knees literally knock together when we're so scared that we can't physically do what we want to do. And all I could do was just keep going forward. And although I couldn't say I love you to that person, the next time I was in a relationship, I did better. And I could say, I love you. And the next time I was in a relationship, the other person was able to say it to me first. And I could say it back. And that's how we progress sometimes. We progress because we try to do the thing we cannot do. And then suddenly we can do it. And that can happen with anything, whether it's using our voice, whether it's being able to go on a date with somebody or go to an interview. Because sometimes we get so stressed and nervous that we might have a migraine, we might get sick to our stomach, we might throw up. We might not physically be able to get on the bus or the train or into the car to go to where we want to go. And it's really important that we don't beat ourselves up for that, you know. Yes, it's wonderful to be brave. Yes, it's wonderful to be able to do those things, to get on the plane and to get on the bus and to have that really professional phone call. It's wonderful to be able to stand up in front of thousands of people and speak and have those great days. But we don't always have great days. And sometimes we need to have a lot of iffy days and a lot of practice to be able to do those things. And it's really worth listening to people who you admire and who are doing all the things that you want to do. And listen to their stories of how it was when they first started. Because a lot of the time we have to practice, you know, we have to rehearse, we have to try things and do things on the quiet before we're ready to really share it with everybody. And if you have a feeling in your illness or anything going on with you where you're feeling like you're failing, okay, I know it's not easy. And I know it's hard when, like for me with migraines, I do my best, I take lots of different tablets and things. And then sometimes I get a really bad one and I feel, you know, like I failed. And then I have to remember that most days I'm doing a lot better than I was because I'm managing my condition, because I'm moving through it and doing the best I can with my health. And just remember that success is born very often of failure, of trial and error. And it won't always be like this. It won't always be like this. You know, we move onwards and upwards. And we can look forward to times when there are more good days than bad days. We just do our best. That's all we can do, is do our best. And if you don't know how to do better, we just explore. We keep exploring. We keep finding new ways of doing something. We try one thing. If it doesn't work, we try another. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's worth saying, is to ask for help. And a couple of weeks ago, I rang up the Migraine Trust helpline, and I met them last year, and I got a lot of help and advice from them last year. And I hadn't called their helpline, and I was lying in bed. I had this terrible migraine for a couple of days, and I was really thinking, what more can I do? What more can I do? What about if I try and go to the doctor? What about if I try this? What about if I try that? And it was a real sort of rock bottom moment. And the best thing was I sat down and I called them and I said, you know, what can you recommend? What can you say? What can you advise? And they gave me a few suggestions. And when I told them about my doctor and what my doctor had been like, they said, yes, you should definitely change your doctor because you deserve better. You deserve better than that. And even just that was really helpful to me. But also, it was just helpful to talk to somebody and have somebody who understood, who could say, yes, this is a really tough illness. And the way you're feeling isolated, is very, very common. And the most important thing, if you have an illness or condition that makes you feel very lonely or isolated, is have a chat with somebody, you know? And it was really helpful to me to have a chat with them and to know, you know what, I can call back anytime. I can get more advice, more help. And there are things I can do. I'm not ready to give up yet. There are many more things I can try that will hopefully make things better and easier for me. And I'm already feeling better from their advice. But I also feel good taking that first step. I took that first step, called them, and you know what? I know I can do that. And I know that if I feel like I'm in a really hard place again, I can call them again and get more support, more advice. Because we're not in this alone, And there's a huge, for that illness and for many other illnesses, there are huge groups of people, patients, charities, people who are really concerned and caring about us as a community, no matter what illness you might have, what health issue you have. So it's really worth remembering that and reaching out, looking around, and accepting also. One of the wonderful things that I have is that the teachers who've come into my life have often had quite severe health issues. And the way that they've handled them and moved through them has been a really good example to me, and a really good lesson to me to help me whenever I am facing a really difficult time. So I hope this helps. If you've got any questions, please just let me know. And maybe I'll do a few more lives as well along the way. But just a little chat. And I'm now going to probably go and have a small nap. That's why I'm wearing my glasses, so I can just take them off any time today and go and close my eyes for 10, 15 minutes and just allow that migraine to leave my body. Okay? You take it easy, and I'll see you soon. Lots of love. Bye.